Welcome to T.R.E.E., Trauma-Informed Parenting with Dr. Hasshan. The T.R.E.E. podcast presents resources, skills, and healthy parenting approaches rooted in self-care, self-compassion, and self-love, because we recognize that healthy roots produce healthy fruits. Today's session, we're going to talk about community and historical trauma. SAMHSA describes individual trauma as resulting from an event, series of events, or circumstances that is experienced by an individual as physically or emotionally harmful or life-threatening, and that has lasting adverse effects on the individual's functioning, mental, physical, social, emotional, or spiritual well-being. We want to talk about 4 of the most common responses to trauma: fight, flight, freeze, and one that's less commonly known and talked about, fawn. So, the fight response to trauma is that irritability that you feel, loss of temper, or quick defensiveness. This is self-explanatory. When you're ready to fight, when you feel backed in a corner, or you experience a loss of power and hopelessness. That flight response is avoidance, anxiety, fear, or even detaching or disassociating that you'll see within yourself or possibly your child. And then that freeze response is numbing, again, detachment or giving up easily. It's critical that we're able to recognize that these are normal defenses and responses to high threats of trauma, and spend some time reflecting on what are your normal trauma responses, and think about your children, because every child, although from the same family, possibly born and raised in the same home, will have a different trauma response: fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And to fawn is to cringe or flutter, the response of really complying with the attacker to save yourself. It's this form of codependency. If you think about the child that aligns with, say, an abusive parent, or in the work setting, the coworker that aligns with and supports an abusive supervisor, that's fawning. That's protecting yourself by aligning with and growing closer to and connected to the abuser. So we really want to be aware of what our natural and primary trauma responses are, so that we can recognize them and move forward with intentionality and teach our children healthier and better ways of being. Community trauma is trauma that manifests at the community level. And trauma at the community level requires community level interventions. So we always talk about this idea that healing occurs in authentic relationships and within community. We really want to restore the village and work together to bring about the changes that our children and our families need. What are some of the social implications of trauma? There are manifestations or symptoms of community trauma at the community level. These symptoms are present in social, cultural environment, the physical and built environment, and the economic environment. We're talking about poor romantic, familial, and friendly relationships. We're talking about poverty. We're talking about crime and incarceration. So when you look at the outcomes and divorce rates and relational outcomes across the community, these are often due to community level traumas. When you look at the high levels of poverty, when you look at dilapidated schools, when you look at litter and crime, broken windows across the community, these are often due to community level trauma. And of course, the most obvious one, gun violence. Gun violence is a manifestation of community violence, interpersonal, structural, and family violence that combine across the community. Let's talk a little bit about historical trauma. The research on historical trauma started with children of Holocaust survivors. Children of Holocaust survivors have an increased vulnerability for PTSD and other mental health diagnoses. They talk about the dreams, the fantasies, and the associations that they had from the Holocaust, and they had never been there, believing that they were riding in a cattle car on a subway, the smells, the reminders, the sounds, and they had never been there. So resilience is a process, right? And we know that Holocaust survivors report finding solace in behaviors that help them establish control and fulfillment, finding some sense of safety in recognized routines, reestablishing a sense of control or mastery, or the sense that there are choices to be made no matter how small, seeking and providing mutual supporting relationships, maintaining positive emotions and creativity, and gaining an appreciation for newfound strengths and affirmation of life. So just as Holocaust survivors have experienced this large-scale historical trauma, Dr. Joy DeGruy talks about post-traumatic slave syndrome. This is the theory that suggests the centuries of enslavement followed by systemic racism and oppression have resulted in multi-generational adaptive behaviors, some of which have been positive and were used for survival, reflective of the resilience, and others that have been detrimental and destructive. We call these maladaptive behaviors. So when you talk about this idea of breaking what people call generational curses, it's really looking at what are the behaviors that we display that are no longer needed to survive in today's time. In brief, Dr. DeGruy presents facts, statistics, and documents that illustrate how varying levels of both clinical induced and socially learned residual stress related issues pass through along from generation to generation as a result of the enslavement of Africans across the diaspora. The path to healing requires us recognizing that it is critical we utilize a multi-tiered approach to addressing trauma. That's at the family level, that's at the individual level, that's at the community level, and it's at the structural level. We know that healing occurs in authentic relationships and within community, and that communities and structures are made up of individuals. So when we're talking about trauma-informed parenting and supporting our children in growing and evolving and thriving, there is individual work that we have to do. Here are some ways to restore emotional stability after trauma in yourself and in your child. Take great care of yourself when it's most difficult. Those dark days when you don't want to get out of bed, those days when you struggle to engage with others, those days that you struggle to believe in yourself and to do the routines that you know are healthy and support a positive mental health and well-being, take great care of yourself and do them. Eat a well-balanced diet, exercise, get adequate rest, and avoid alcohol and drugs. Alcohol and drugs numb us and prevent us to fully feel what we need to be experiencing. And rest is critical. A daily routine of structured activities, maintain and avoid major life decisions such as changing careers, leaving a relationship, or moving soon after a traumatic event. And really focus and commit to pursuing hobbies or other interests in moderation, things that you know help to pick you up and pull you out of a hole when you're feeling rough. So we know we need healthy relationships, and we also need healthy practices. Avoid isolation. Utilize writing as a healing art. I journal every day, and I encourage my children growing up to journal every day. Maintain a healthy and supportive community. Communicate the experience with people who are able to support you. We are social beings, and we need people that we can trust. Attend a local support group or meet up with people who have had similar experiences. There is something about being in community with like-minded people that understand the challenges that you've had, the challenges that your children are having, and ways in which we can grow and work together. In closing, it's often difficult to identify symptoms from causes in social manifestation of trauma in individuals. Therefore, we must not neglect focusing on the structural and root causes impacting individuals, families, and communities. Thank you.